I want you all to hit that subscribe button because we're going to be live all day for the NFL trade deadline on November 4th. Reports indicate that the Raiders, they could be buyers and they could be sellers. But today's show is all about the Raiders selling, and today is all about the top Raiders trade candidates. I wouldn't trade Raider Nation for anything, and if you agree with that statement, make sure you subscribe. My name is Mitchell Renz. You're watching the Raiders Report, and coming up here on today's show, we're going to discuss the top Raiders trade candidates before the 2025 NFL trade deadline. The way that I wanted to do this today is I thought about ranking them, but I really truly only feel like in my heart of hearts there's one guy that I'll sit up here and I'll say that I think ends up getting dealt, and everybody knows who it is, Jacobi Meyers. But to me, I'm going to throw out 8 names, and I'm not saying that the Raiders are shopping these guys. For the Raiders, they're a 2-5 football team. The 8 players that you're going to see on today's show, 4 on offense, 4 on defense, are players that, if there's other teams out there looking to win, these are the players that I would pick up the phone and call the Raiders about. Let's go to the very first name here on defense. Yes, we're going to start on the defensive side of the football today, which I typically do not do. Adam Butler will be the first name that I bring up here at defensive tackle. The reason why Butler's on this show, I don't want the Raiders to move on from him. I think he's arguably your best defensive tackle, though he hasn't played nearly as well this season as what I was hoping for when the Raiders brought him back. He's 31 years old. He signed that 3-year extension this offseason. The one issue that people might have in trading away Adam Butler is the Raiders have already paid his 2026 season. Now, some of you would go, well, that's dumb to trade him away if we've already paid it. I mean, it's like $3-4 million. It's not a lot of money. So if you're the Raiders and you're like, could I get a higher draft pick? If a team would be like, oh, I'm basically getting a free Adam Butler, could this regime decide to do it? Because you drafted J.J. Pegues. You drafted Tonka Hemingway. So for all of those reasons out there, and teams are always looking for interior defensive lineman help, that's why I'm going to put Adam Butler on this list, though I think there's a very small chance that he actually ends up getting dealt. Let's go to the next player here. It's going to be Tyree Wilson, and if you didn't think that Wilson's name was going to be on this show, you probably have been underneath a rock, and you probably haven't been watching this program for all that long. I wish the Raiders would play Tyree at defensive tackle a little bit more than a defensive end, and maybe that's just never going to happen. He showed some flashes this season of some good. He's also shown some flashes of, you're like, damn it, Tyree, figure it out, man. But he was drafted 7th overall in the 2023 NFL draft by Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler, so he's had to deal with, multiple different regimes. I mean, the Pete Carroll regime is his 3rd different regime in 3 years. So I know that this team's not going to be picking up his 5th-year option, and the deciding factor for the Raiders will be this offseason. They have to decide before, I think it's like May, and that they're not going to do that 5th-year option. I also will sit up here and I'll say this. If Tyree Wilson still looks the way that he does after working 3 years with Rob Leonard, one of the best defensive line coaches in the NFL, I'm not sure if anyone's going to be able to get the most out of him. So because of that, people will look at the upside. Because people see the upside of that 7th overall pick, that's why you could see the Raiders move on from him. Now today, it's all about trades. Moving on from certain players. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. If the Raiders make only one trade, who ends up getting traded? My answer coming up here after this YouTube ad break. If only one trade ends up going down, the name to watch is Jacobi Meyers. I'll also say this, though. I think that the other name to watch if a trade goes down, Jackson Powers-Johnson. Not that I want the Raiders to move on from JPJ, but there's a lot of teams that need interior offensive lineman help, and the Raiders clearly have a vendetta against him. Let's go to another defensive player. It's going to be Malcolm Koonce at the defensive end position, and some of you are going to be like, Mitch, why are you trying to trade away our entire defensive line? I'm not trying to trade away our defensive line, but let's face the facts here. There's nobody from our linebackers that anybody's going to want to trade for. There's not a cornerback on our team that anybody's going to want to trade for. There's not a single safety outside of Jeremy Chin. We ain't moving on from him that anybody's going to go out there and try to trade for. What do teams always look for? Players that help get after the quarterback. And Malcolm Koonce was a hot commodity this offseason in free agency. There were some people that thought that he could get $20 million a year. Now, the Raiders, they signed him to that 1-year extension, and he struggled this season. He hasn't looked nearly as good. He's going to be a free agent in the offseason. But for a guy like Koonce, If I was Koonce's agent, I would sit here and I go, I'm a young player coming off an ACL where I got to learn a brand new regime yet again, and it's not a me problem. It's a Raiders problem. And I do think that there would be a lot of people out there, especially organizations, that would probably go, yeah, I could probably see why it's a Raiders problem. And I don't know what you'd get for Malcolm. I would want probably a 6th-round pick, a 5th-round pick for him. And if you're like, oh, my God, that's all we're going to get, that's probably all you're going to get for Malcolm Koonce. Let's go to the final name here, and it's the biggest one, Maxx Crosby. I do not think that the Raiders will trade away Max. According to Ricky Scoops, the Raiders also will not be moving on from Mad Max. Here's the problem, though. The number one player that all 31 NFL teams would want to trade for from the Raiders, the 2-5 Raiders, it's number 98. It's the Condor. And the reason also why it's being discussed is because of the contract that Crosby signed this offseason. He front-loaded it, and him and his agent, they made it easier for the Raiders to be able to trade him away. Now, I was told by a source that a trade would happen with Crosby if one ever were to happen. It wouldn't happen until 2026 or 2027, just again, based on the way that that deal is made. But everything that I'm being told, Crosby ain't going to go anywhere. But the idea of this show is just to outline some players that could potentially be on the move or that could get interest from other teams. Crosby's going to get interest from all 31 teams. Why? The Raiders are 2-5, and we stink right now. Coming up next here, though, on the show, let's talk about some of these trade candidates on the offensive side of the football, because I do really think if a trade were to happen, it would be more on the defensive side of the football with all the struggles that we've been having with Chip Kelly, and Pete is more of a defensive-minded guy. Before I get into some of those offensive names, today's show sponsored by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. All you got to do is pick, predict, and play. America's #1 fantasy sports app out there. And PrizePicks, it's the best place to win cash while watching sports. Whether you're watching football, whether you're watching basketball, whether you're watching baseball, hockey, I don't care what it is. Join millions of users and sign up today. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right, and I do really, really mean this. I hope that you guys always take advantage of every sponsor that we talk about. When you show love to them, it only helps us out. That link is going to be available to y'all down in the comments, down in the description of today's show. Let's go to the offensive side of the football. The first name that you're going to see might be a little bit jarring, Yoda Jenkins. It is Aidan O'Connell. And some of you are going to go, Mitch, Aidan is on IR. We're not going to trade him anyway. Here's the issue that the Raiders and Geno and Pete Carroll are going to run into. The moment, and I mean it, the moment the Raiders make Aidan O'Connell healthy, the amount of fans that are already begging Raider Nation, already begging me, already begging Pete Carroll to start AOC over Geno Smith, it's going to be loud. And one of the biggest reasons why the Raiders passed on Shedeur Sanders in the draft was because this was a team that wanted everybody to buy in to Geno Smith. They traded for Geno. They extended Geno. Obviously, Geno's been a dumpster fire. But the Raiders also went out and they traded for Kenny Pickett. If Geno Smith gets benched, it's going to be Kenny Pickett time. If Kenny Pickett is bad, they will go back to Geno Smith. It will not be Aidan O'Connell. And because AOC is a really good quarterback 3, well, I mean, at this point, I wouldn't even be against doing an actual competition. But if you think Pete Carroll is benching Geno Smith for Aidan O'Connell, I got another thing coming for you. So I would say there's probably going to be a team looking for a backup quarterback. And if Aidan O'Connell could fill that need for a 7th-round pick, I do honestly think that the Raiders would take advantage of it. Let's go to another play here on the trade block, potentially. Offensive guard, Dylan Parham. And Parham was drafted in 2022 by the Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler regime, and he was an offensive lineman that when the Raiders drafted him, I actually thought that this was going to be our future at center because I thought he was a really good player in terms of being able to figure out, what's being presented to him. He's done a much better job over the past few weeks at left guard, but here's the thing. He's in the final year of his contract, and whether you like Parham or not, that's totally up to you, but I do think teams value his versatility. And if you're a team, honestly, we're talking to Chugs here. If you're a team like the Houston Texans and you're sitting back and you're like, holy shit, I got 4 offensive linemen that are terrible, Could I go out and get an offensive lineman that can play left guard, that can play center, that can play right guard, that can play right tackle? That's kind of what Dylan Parham is. And I'm not saying that he would be a starter on all 32 NFL teams, because I don't think that he would be. But all 32 teams would have value in Parham because, again, of the depth that he helps you provide from an offensive line standpoint. And then the other part, you drafted Caleb Rogers in the 3rd round, and you drafted Charles Grant. I talked to a source probably about a week ago that kind of told me, like, there are some people inside that organization that don't know if Charles Grant is going to be the left tackle. There are some people that are wondering, could he play guard? And that's a question that needs to remain to be seen. I personally think that he can play tackle. You're just going to have to let him develop here a little bit. But if you were Las Vegas and you were sitting back there and you're like, well, what if I traded Dylan Parham now, got a 6th-round pick in return for him? Could I use one of my young players that I drafted in the 3rd round? It is a potential to throw out there, and that's why Dylan Parham is on this list. Coming up here, though, I think I got the 2 biggest trade candidates on this show. And I already mentioned them. You're going to hear me talk about them a little bit more in length, but I will say this. At the end of the day, people that watch this show, even when the Raiders are bad, I call them real ones. If you don't know what a real one is here, a real one at Chat Sports is somebody, you know how Raider Nation always screams, Raider Nation for life? We got a saying here at Chat Sports, real one for life. These are people that watch all the videos that I drop. These are people that comment on every single video that I drop. And you might not believe it, but I am in the comment section way, way more often than what y'all realize. Why? If you spend time watching videos that I make, I'm going to spend time looking at what you guys have to say. It's what friends do. It's what families do. It's what real ones do. So to Ben, Wide, Rudy, Jesus, and Raider Tone, thank you guys so much for always being real ones. And if you want to see yourself on a future show, make sure you're subscribed, make sure you're commenting on the videos, and make sure I see you. Because the more you comment, the more I see your name, the better chance you got getting a shout out on the program. Let's go to another offensive lineman here. It's going to be JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson. I'll tell you this right now. Out of all the players not named Maxx Crosby, the number 1 player that would make me lose a gasket if traded, JPJ. Why? I think he is a building block player. I think he's exactly the perfect player that you have on your roster if you draft a running back like Ashton Genty. I think he's the best center we have. For whatever reason, though, this organization does not seem to value him. For whatever reason, Chip Kelly, Pete Carroll, they are only making Jackson Powers Johnson compete, and nobody else on that offensive line has to compete. I don't know why they don't like him. I don't know what the story is. I have reached out to multiple members of the Jackson Powers Johnson family just asking for any type of intel. I have not gotten anything. And I do wonder if, because I haven't gotten anything, does that actually mean that something is going on? But the Raiders, again, drafted Caleb Rogers. They drafted Charles Grant. And I do wonder, after the benching week 7 for Alex Kappa, who is a John Spytek guy, could there be a team out there that goes, well, I'll trade you for JPJ? Because I personally, if you wanted to trade away JPJ, if somebody asked me what I would want a 2nd-round pick for him. I think if you were to ask John Spytek and Pete Carroll, I think they'd go 5th-round pick. And because there's such a big difference there in the way that we value them compared to the way that they value them, that, to me, sounds like a deal that another team could potentially take. But if you agree with this statement here, I hope that you hit that like button, and that's what a real one would do. If you would be pissed, mad, angry, disappointed, fill in the synonym down below. If the Raiders traded away JPJ, I'm going to warn you right now, you're going to hear some F words, and they're not the good effing kind. The final trade candidate here is the number 1 name on this show. It's Jacobi Meyers. And you know, I saw the reports earlier on Tuesday. I saw the rumors on Monday. He didn't play against the Kansas City Chiefs. It is clear. Jakobi Meyers wants to be traded away from the Raiders. I was told that I don't think that he's ever going to play another snap for the Raiders, so that's kind of what I've been going with here. But here's the other thing. He did also say that he's a professional, and he knows that if the Raiders don't trade him away, he's still got to go out there and he's got to play football games. So he's looking at, he wants to get traded. He wants a new contract. He didn't play week 7 against the Kansas City Chiefs. There are multiple, and I mean multiple teams interested. If you watch this show and you're like, Mitch, why do you do these shows if the Raiders never make any trades? I think that there is a much greater chance. I think there's honestly a 3 just win baby chance, a 90% chance, if you will, that Jakobi Meyers is traded before that November 4th deadline. So one more time here, these to me are the top candidates for the Las Vegas Raiders to be dealt. If you could help this show grow, take a screenshot, post a pic on Instagram. Make sure you tag me at MitchellRens365. If I see that you guys do that on Thursday, I'll do my best to also share it to give you guys a little bit of love.